Okay, thank you, Jesse. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Outstanding. Sorry about that. Okay, so here's your humor. So we're really changing the culture across the Department of Defense and actually across the federal government to include our industry partners. And there's a lot of curiosity about what is the cloud. So again, I'm going to add a little humor here just to indulge me in the morning. And the last one I like, because one thing I've tried to convey to leadership within the government is it would be nice if we could wash our data, so to speak, and really put only that data that's necessary in the cloud. We are now in a state where we have what we call zero trust as a framework, that you always assume that an adversary is in your environment. You always assume that your assets and your data and your users may be vulnerable or susceptible to an adversary. So in consideration of that zero trust, if we were really to identify the data we really want to protect, and if it goes to the cloud, implement that level of protection necessary for that data. Our networks today operate in just throw everything in, and especially our classified networks, it's throw everything in, even including CUI and financial information, which then requires us to put additional protections, or we assume it's in a classified network and it's protected. So as we go to cloud, I'll talk to you about the different environments, hosting environments in the cloud. And please, speed me up, guys, if I'm too elementary for you. But if you understand cloud at all, I just wanted to give a basis of my discussion. When I'm talking cloud, it's really someone else's data center, and it's not ours anymore, especially if you're using a commercial provider like Microsoft or Amazon. And in that, you have infrastructure as a service, which you're really buying the equipment, the applications and services offered to you by that provider. Platform as a service is you're actually doing exercising tools and technologies within the cloud. And then software as a service is all of your applications. You think of your mobile applications, your desktop applications, things like O365 and ServiceNow. So when we think about our migratory efforts to the cloud, we want to migrate to it in a platform as a service, build on it. If you're taking major applications into the cloud, you can actually what I call cloudify them within a platform as a service, and then consume software as a service. And where are the clouds? As you can see, there are data centers all over the globe. And the way the cloud works is they parse that data out to respective data centers. So within the Department of Defense, we really have to consider where is our data, and we really focus on when we have DoD data in the clouds, it's definitely going to be in a CONUS hosting environment. We're now starting to, we have some working groups talking about how do we support our warfighters OCONUS. And so solutions are coming within the next couple of years to support the warfighters overseas. The DoD Cloud Strategy, kind of our current state today is we have a hodgepodge of what we call on-prem, off-prem, in the cloud. We also have MilCloud, which is basically a DISA, DoD-hosted internal cloud environment where a lot of what we call the fourth estate, Defense Logistics Agency, DCSA, et cetera, are hosting their applications. And it was essentially moving the DISA decks, if you're familiar with those, into a cloud-based architecture. Some JEDI Pathfinder projects that we've had, folks have gone to O365. We have a lot of activity going on in the cloud. Amazon Web Services, the Air Force actually just extended licensing and services to AWS because JEDI's been slow to roll, and I don't know if you've been keeping up with the Joint Enterprise Defense infrastructure, but it went under protest and court, some legal issues, and so now we're having to, and it was awarded to Microsoft Azure to be the infrastructure as a service for the Department of Defense. Now that is under a full recompete, so it's going to be some time before we see how that is awarded. There's pressure to go to a multi-cloud solution, and when I say JEDI, it's really contract vehicles to enable and expedite getting some cost efficiencies when migrating to cloud. So like I said, Navy, Air Force, Army, Marine Corps, and a lot of the agencies have already bought cloud. When we consider the migration to the cloud, I also want to bring up, just some considerations to security threats to commercial cloud and what we need to consider when we talk about our cybersecurity posture and our defenses that we want to put in place. We're always susceptible to data breach, data loss, denial of service, and you can read the list here. Insider threat becomes a different twist because we have not only our trusted insiders within DoD and maybe our mission partners that are with other government agencies or other countries' mission partners, but we now have to worry about the service providers themselves because we don't necessarily have our hands on the keyboards managing and having access to the physical hardware that is managing our data and applications. So we have different forms of insider threats that we will now be vulnerable to. And there are some things to consider with the public cloud security threats. If you look at the bottom right, we're now exposing our data, and if we don't button it up, they don't. Again, we assume there's an adversary in there, so zero trust. And the exposure, we want to limit the exposure of our data. The service providers themselves, like Microsoft and Amazon, they tout security, but do you really know? And as a result of not fully knowing and fully trusting, we put some things in place to protect our information in the cloud. There's always the human error, and then we have just theft, people taking the data right out of the environments or losing it out of the environments. Unauthorized access is always an issue. Then disruption, again, we don't control the backhoes that might be servicing an Amazon web center. That's always a threat. Or just denial of access as a result of an internet breach. So as we start to think about how we are going to build out our protections within the Department of Defense, I kind of look at your smartphone and how you have a number of mobile applications on that device, and you go to your App Store or your Play Store, your Google Store, or whatever shop you use on your smartphone device or your laptop, and bring down a mobile application, whether that be a game, a collaboration tool, a productivity application, whatever that may be, you pretty much automatically trust that app has been vetted and you can use it on that mobile device or that laptop or desktop. But what we really don't know is the bugs that could be introduced or the malware that could be introduced within that code. So the Department of Defense is progressively positioned and implementing what we call development, security, and operations all into what we call DevSecOps. What is DevSecOps? And again, I'll give you the slides, Jesse, so people can go back and read them, but I want to maximize the time that I have with you. And this kind of describes what is DevSecOps, but I'm going to focus on what I love about it. It delivers applications rapidly and in a very secure manner. We will have developers. I'll talk to you in a little bit about how the developers will be, throughout the Department of Defense, our DIB partners, our .edus, and other government agencies contributing to applications necessary for operations in our warfighter environments. So what we want to do is bake in and enforce cybersecurity from the beginning, the infancy of any code development, software development. And as we're doing that, as we're baking in security and what we call supply chain risk management, we want to enhance our enterprise visibility of those development activities. So we're very open kimono. There's the leader of DevSecOps within the Department of Defense is Nick Shalon, and he is on LinkedIn, and you can capture a lot of understanding and awareness and visibility into what the Air Force is doing and leading for the Department of Defense with respect to DevSecOps. At the end of my briefing, and also you'll get the slides, is a lot of resources to best inform you as to where the department is going with DevSecOps. Another big thing is if you're involved at all in the risk management framework or the system assessment and authorization process, it's incredibly cumbersome. We have tools like EMAS and Exacta that we have to populate, manually populate. We have to implement and assess security controls in a very manual, intensive, resource-intensive manner. So now we're progressing to automate as much as we can, automate the automatable, we call it, to automatically assess those controls and remediate them in near real time. We're also looking at, how continuous monitoring of these controls is conducted and automating that as well. To include what I love and what I encourage in every defensive cyber operations architecture is continuous pen testing. And what that allows us to do is have those adversarial attacks against those controls continuously. That allows us to be agile and continuously improve, be innovative to stay ahead of the adversary. We also, in DevSecOps, ensure seamless application portability. So when an application is rendered safe and secure, and we have the ability to manage that application or that code, we can port it into any cloud hosting environment that's necessary. And it gives us, I'll talk to you about the different types of cloud or different cloud hosting environments that the DoD has. And we really want to have that ability to take an application, I'll just use Angry Birds as a gaming application. I can move that from an unclassified cloud to a classified cloud to a cloud that's